We've spent the last few off seasons talking about the potential of a Stefon Diggs trade, and it's something that felt like it never actually happened, but it finally has. Stefon Diggs was traded by the Bills to the Texans. Buffalo gave up Diggs, a 2024 sixth rounder, and a 2025 fifth, all for a 2025 second round pick. It's not exactly a big haul, but it's all for a player that hasn't necessarily been happy in his situation and had a really bad end to last season. The Texans did originally inherit that once signed 4-year, $96 million contract that he once signed with Buffalo. Now, there was a potential out after this season with no dead cap, and instead, they just stripped the last 3 years from that deal. So after this season, Stefon Diggs is going to be a free agent, so that trade really is essentially just for a 1-year rental now, and he could re-sign, of course, but regardless, that's a lot to give up, and it makes sense that they didn't get a ton in return for Stefon Diggs. It'll still be a lot of money for this upcoming season, but really it's just one of those risks that you can take when you have a lot of salary cap room like the Texans do, thanks to a quarterback that is on a rookie deal. I think this trade makes a ton of sense, really, for both sides. I think you can argue that maybe it just wasn't quite working out well in Buffalo with Stefon Diggs, and now the Bills are able to get rid of him before he really hits that decline and save some money while they're at it. And at worst, the Texans get a good veteran wide receiver who can help CJ Stroud make that leap forward at least for 1 year. Nico Collins was the number one last season for Stroud and had a great year. He had about 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. It was just his third season in the league, and he hadn't had a 500-yard year until Stroud took over. Tank Dell had 700 yards, Dalton Schultz had 600, and Noah Brown had 500. Robert Woods also had 400. It was really just all over the place, and Stroud did a good job spreading the ball around. Still, I don't really buy Nico as a true number one receiver, but I do bet he'd be a pretty good 2 or 3. Tank Dell is coming off of a broken leg, and he only played in 11 games, but he had a really good rookie season before he did get hurt. If he's back to full strength and put on an offense with Nico Collins and Stefon Diggs, the Texans should look pretty good, especially with CJ Stroud behind center. He already played well as a rookie. Now it should be even easier to make a big jump in year 2 and beyond. Not to mention that Houston went out and traded for Joe Mixon from the Bengals as well. Cincinnati signed Zach Moss and had planned on just releasing Mixon, but instead, Houston sent a 7th round pick over for him. He's coming off of his 4th career 1,000-yard season, and now he can be paired up with Dameon Pierce, who had 900 yards as a rookie, but did lose the starting job to Devin Singletary late last year, who is now just with the Giants. There are a lot of reasons to be excited about the Texans, and now Bobby Slowick is back for another year with some really good pieces to work with. I really thought he'd end up being a head coach, and I even personally wanted him in Washington, but he wanted to go back to Houston. There was unfinished business, and now we get to see how good they could be this season, and Stefon Diggs should just make them even better. I really do love the move for the Texans. It absolutely makes them a better team going forward, especially next season. It also makes some sense for the Bills in a lot of ways, but it definitely doesn't make them better. Stefon Diggs has definitely had his moments of frustrations in Buffalo, and it's kind of funny looking back to just the day before the trade. On Twitter, somebody said that Diggs was not essential to the success of Josh Allen in response to an RG3 tweet. Diggs responded, "You sure?" And now we're going to find out if Diggs was essential for his success or not. I think it's pretty clear that the Bills wanted to get rid of Stefon Diggs. Since they traded him before June 1st, the Bills have to take his whole dead cap this year. Instead, if it were after June 1st, then it would have been just about $8.8 million in dead cap this season, with the rest coming in 2025. All that just to get a 2nd rounder next year back in return and have to give up some late picks. The big surprise with the Bills trading away Stefon Diggs is really just the reality that they aren't in a very good spot at wide receiver. like at all. Suddenly, the number one wideout in Buffalo is Khalil Shakir. He had 600 yards last season in his second year in the pros. As a fifth-round rookie, he had 161 yards, and he clearly made a lot of progress. I think he should continue to just keep getting better, but I really don't like the idea of him being the number one option after trading away Stefon Diggs and having Gabe Davis leave in free agency to Jacksonville. The Bills have at least been filling the wide receiver void a little bit this offseason. They did give Curtis Samuel a 3-year, $24 million contract. He's coming off of back-to-back 600-yard seasons with Washington. He ended up not being as good as a lot of fans, including myself, had hoped, but there definitely was a different spring in his step last season after he had just dealt with so many injuries before. Then there's Matt Collins, who is coming off of a disappointing season in Atlanta, but right before that, he did have nearly 700 yards with the Raiders. There are going to be some options for Josh Allen, especially at tight end. Rookie Dalton Kincaid had almost 700 yards and should continue to be a good weapon in his sophomore season. And of course, Dawson Knox is still in Buffalo as well. I have a pretty good feeling that the Bills are going to be looking to draft a wideout at 28. Luckily for them, it's a really good receiver draft, but they aren't going to have a shot at the top guys. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze are probably all going to be off the board. Then it's really just going to depend on who else is still available. Brian Thomas Jr., A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Lad McConkey, and more. There are going to be good receivers. I just don't know who of the bunch is actually going to be there at 28. But clearly, the Bills could use another good wide receiver now. It's really a shame because I do think every single time I've turned back around, the Bills have gotten worse this offseason. Buffalo is paying Josh Allen a lot, and they've had a lot of players leave simply due to money reasonings. Meanwhile, the Texans are able to afford a guy like Stefon Diggs because CJ Stroud is still on his rookie contract. But of course, their time is coming. The Bills had a really good window to be a Super Bowl team and were the preseason favorite at 1.2. That clearly just never worked out. Now it's going to be a lot harder. Just looking at the defense, they no longer have Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, or Tre'Davious White. You're talking about the once best safety duo in football and a corner who it feels like has been in Buffalo for forever. Plus, Leonard Floyd is gone too. Then on the offense, you've now lost Stefon Diggs with Gabe Davis. Here's the thing though. The Bills didn't actually want to get rid of those guys, other than Diggs, I'd assume. He has certainly been a classic wide receiver diva. 2 seasons ago ended with him screaming at Josh Allen on the sideline, and then he didn't even do his normal media availability post-game. He then ended up not going to mandatory minicamp either. There were, of course, whispers that he could get traded, but he stuck around in Buffalo. Even with all his drama, he was always a big part of their success and the development of Josh Allen. The Bills traded for him in 2020, and he immediately came in and led the league in receptions and receiving yards. He had well over 1,000 yards in each of his 4 seasons in Buffalo, including last year, which didn't even end great. Diggs had 100 yards in 5 of the first 6 games of the season. He was playing fantastic. He didn't have 90 yards in a single game for the rest of the year. Over Buffalo's final 8 games, he had just shy of 350 yards and only 1 touchdown. That just wasn't the same Stefon Diggs we had been used to over the years. And maybe that has a reason for him being traded. He's just always the center of drama, and it looked like he could be traded again this offseason after some pretty odd tweets on March 15th. He tweeted a heart and then ready for whatever. It wasn't immediate, but it eventually did happen. And now we're going to see how he settles down in Houston. We're going to get the Bills coming to Houston to play the Texans this season, so buckle up for a very fun revenge game. And the Texans go to Dallas to face the Cowboys, so we could get Stefon Diggs one-on-one with his brother Trayvon Diggs. I don't quite know how well this is going to work out for the Texans, but I still do like it as a move. I bet Stefon Diggs is still a 1,000-yard receiver next year and should be a very good, reliable weapon for CJ Stroud. Obviously, it does hurt the Bills, at least on paper, but when you think back to all the drama and all the chaos and different rumors, maybe it could be a good thing.